Welcome into Rounding the Bases.
Round the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg. It's around the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Rounding the Bases, presented by Community America Credit Union, invested in you. If you're here in my neck of the woods in Kansas City, you see Community America all over the place. Certainly a lot of sponsorship and partnership, I should say, with the Chiefs and the Royals and even a little guy like me. I love the relationship with them. Excited about what's coming up in 2025. And yeah, I can't believe it's 2025. You might be listening to this in 2027. I don't know. I mean, that's the beauty of podcasts. Will we still have them then in 27? Yeah, I think we're safe for a while until the next thing comes around. But great to have all of you with us. Shout out to my friends at Chief of Staff Kansas City. Whether you are in Kansas City or around the country, if you're looking for a resource in terms of jobs, in terms of hiring, and just good people that get it, great culture, check them out, chiefofstaffkc.com, making connections that matter. I've got a great connection today and really someone that is doing, I think, the type of work that all of us can learn from and benefit. Certainly in my world, I can. I'm joined by a PR pro who is turning heads in the media world. Meet Beth Nydick, founder of the F.A.M.E Lab, F-A.M.E, F.A.M.E, with a proven formula to amplify entrepreneurs from hidden gems to industry icons. It's not just a media thing. Entrepreneurs, you're all going to want to check this out. As a former producer for some of the most recognizable TV networks in the world, her expertise has made her the go-to visibility expert for a who's who of clients. And by leveraging decades of experience, she has found real strategies that do more than get them into the spotlight, but to make their full potential possible. I am joined right now by Beth Nydick. Beth, how are you?
Well, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
It's great to have you from, I believe, the home office in New Jersey. I told you before we got on, I got those Jersey roots. I was born in New Jersey, down in the South, and really actually one of the most beautiful and best states in the country that people aren't aware of because they just pass through on the turnpike. But you're a Jersey girl with an outreach that goes well beyond New Jersey. I think you figured so much of this thing out. How much do you love this world, this media world, this podcast world? This media world, by the way, you and I both have backgrounds in television that is totally different than what we grew up with.
Oh, everything is totally different than we grew up with, right? But I wanted to say, like, being from New Jersey is like being in the mob. Once you're in, you can't get out, no matter when you moved away. I don't care if you were 2 or 13, there's still that Jersey sensibility in you. And I think that's why I like media. Maybe that's where yours started as well, because it's about saying how you're feeling and being bold about allowing people to see who you are. And that kind of encompasses what being from Jersey is actually like, right? We all kind of say what we feel and we want to be noticed. And I think entrepreneurs using media is the fastest, cheapest, only way to really get to the next level of what you want to do. Because so often we see entrepreneurs just kind of like play. And when you use media, that's when you're actually on the real stage.
And it doesn't have to be podcast, but I think that's a key piece. Like I was telling you before that one of the first pieces of advice I got when I started my speaking business, once the person I met with to maybe help me write a first book was, you're not ready to write a book. How about start a podcast? It's the best piece of advice I got. And I tell people all the time that podcasting may not be for everyone, but it doesn't all have to be the same thing. Like, and I'm sure you deal with this type of stuff in every way, but I'm getting emails every morning I wake up from people and places I've never heard of before that are telling me how they can make my podcast better and make me money and on and on and on. I didn't start this podcast for it to compete with Joe Rogan. I mean, I'd love to, sure. I'd also love to, be hanging out with Tony Robbins, but
one day,
but I started this podcast for a branding and a content standpoint, and the fact that it did become a revenue generator, great. My point is, and I guess my question to you is the significance. What's the significance of a podcast or whatever it might be beyond just entertainment, beyond just, hey, I want to jump into this new thing? Because I don't know that people are thinking about it as a tool that can help them.
There is the operative word. It's a business tool, depending on what your goals are. It's really about brand awareness. It's not really about showing up and just talking. It's got to be about directive. I want people to understand who I am, what my point of view is, what my offers are, and how they can connect with me. And how I resonate with them, with the conversation we have, and how I can connect with what the audience is. Because so often entrepreneurs are just focused on giving a good show. Right. I just want to be a good interview. I'm like, I don't want to be a good interview. I want to be a good interview the audience listens to. Right. Because I'm grateful for you having me on, but I'm here because you want your audience to learn from me and then come back and listen to the next person you have on. Let's be honest about it. It's not about this conversation. For you, it's a larger piece. And when you start a podcast, it's got to be more than just talking. If it's a position for a business podcast.
You know what struck me, Beth, as I was watching through some of your videos on Instagram, and we'll have some of the pages up there on our notes. I would encourage everybody to check Beth's stuff out, in part because I think, without knowing you well at all, I mean, we just met, but we all could do our research on each other with the footprints that we've left, is that I think you've figured out how to provide value. And that's what we always hear in sales and in any business, right? And then it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to do it. When I look at your pages, I'm walking out of there saying, boy, I just learned something. Boy, maybe I could do that. This is interesting. Yeah. I hadn't thought about it that way. And so what really, really stood in my mind and resonated with me was what you talked about when you're on someone's podcast, about the importance, and you just touched on it a little bit. I want you to expand the importance of those answers. Like, I hadn't thought about it in terms of the messaging I want to get out or the value I want to provide. I've always thought about it. This isn't a bad thing, in just how can I give the most authentic answer? And so that might play a little bit into what you're doing. Totally. But I want to hear more about that, because I think, first off, people that haven't been on podcasts or aren't used to that, they can sometimes get hung up on just, I hope I know the answers to the questions. What are the questions? There's a nervousness to it.
Right.
And ultimately you want to just get to being yourself. But how did you get to that point? What was it some of your producer had of knowing I need the good guests, right? I need the right people. How did you get to a point of understanding that you can control this messaging and how important that is?
It does come from producing, because it's all about storytelling. But when I'm looking at podcasting or even stages and being on your local news, it's what I want the audience to feel and what I want them to do. So am I going to inspire them? Am I going to educate them, entertain them? I'm going to give them pieces of things they can do so that they are intrigued enough to go find me, right? If you were just a listener, I want you to listen to a podcast I'm on and then go see what else I'm doing. And while you're there, I want you to gain value and know that I'm your person. So when we're having a conversation, I'm really thinking about, what does the audience need to hear to feel like Joel's bringing on somebody who has credibility, and you give me credibility by being here, but also I want you to go find me. So I learned that being focused on the audience, because as you know, in TV, it's not about the guest, it's about the ads. And I talk to my clients all the time about that. When you're watching TV or you're pitching anybody to be on media, it's about the audience watching through your segment and watching the commercial. Because if the show's not making money, there's no more news. And really coming from the point of, like, I'm the content, right? I'm the story, I'm the content. And I need to be the content enough to keep that attention, so you do watch through the commercial or you listen through the sponsorship on a podcast. Yeah. And when you come to it, understanding it is a business tool, and it's not, let's just have a conversation. Because I always tell my clients this as well. How much do you charge an hour? I want you to make that much back in the time you spent on the podcast, right? It's a money-making opportunity for you. So that's why I talk about how to make $10K from your next podcast appearance. Because if I have somebody listening to your show that comes find me and comes into my program, that can be anywhere. That could be a $100,000 client versus a $10,000 client. But I want everyone listening to really think about what they're saying on media, mainly podcast, and how is that connecting to the audience's pain points, so they know that the value I'm offering them is just a little piece. Joel, to be honest, I got a DM from a friend of mine a couple of days ago, and she goes, I'm using your 10K strategy, but I'm not getting anywhere. And my response to her is, you're just using the strategy. You don't have me to help you. And guess what? I have a sales call with her tomorrow. because, right, so I'm offering value, but just enough that you can get an aha, you can get a win, but you're going to need me and my programs or my offers or my books or whatever you have to then get to the next level of what it is for your business.
Yeah. And you're selling, we're all selling, but you're selling in not a
salesy, yucky,
gross, salesy, grimy, sleazy way, whatever, right? Which nobody likes, but there's so much of that out there. Desperation. If people don't know how to do it, that's what, on and on and on. I want to get into F.A.M.E and more of these details in a moment, but let's backtrack. I always like backtracking and talking about the story and your story. What were the goals or the aspirations of a young Beth growing up, and how did you get into the producing world?
I wanted to be an actress. Actually, I went to like the premier acting day camps and sleepaway camps when I was little. Sarah Jessica Parker was a counselor when I was at the camps. Like Adam Levine was at that camp from Maroon 5. And when I started doing acting, I swiftly realized the real power was behind the camera. Right? The talent's not where the power is. They might get the big bucks, but it's not actually where you're moving the story. And I was so much more interested in the story than anything else that I got behind the camera. And I wanted to work in television, entertainment. So I worked for places like The Tonight Show. I worked for MTV and the music and the movie awards with Todd Olm, all the people. And it really taught me about what the audience needs to hear, why they need to hear it, and how you can communicate who you are along with that story. But Joel, I'm a middle child, so I need to be seen. I need to be heard. Like, you remember in high school we used to take those tests, like those aptitude tests. Mine has said PR since I was in 9th grade.
If my mom, a good New Jersey-born girl, is listening, yes, Beth might be talking about you as the middle child as well. I get it. There are only two, my brother and I, but I get the middle child piece. For sure. And I say that with all the love, Mom, just in case you are listening, of course.
I talk about it all the time. My mom's like, really? I'm like, yeah. What do you mean, really? Yeah. Right? Like, not everyone can do what you and I do, but everyone can do it at a certain level. Right? Not everyone can host a show or be a guest all the time, but there are steps for you to get there. Because I don't want people listening being like, well, I can't do that. If you have a story and you have something to say, you can do it. And it's just about communicating the feelings behind the story rather than the information of the story.
No doubt about it. And when you convey the feelings of the story, the information becomes that much more powerful. That to me has been the most fun thing about getting on stage, because I can't tell those stories in 30 seconds for my quick in-game hits. And in case any of my producers are listening right now, and they're not, they would tell me that I've never been capable of telling a story in 30 seconds. I get it. So that's why it goes a minute, and hopefully we don't miss a home run. Anyway,
yes,
it's so much fun. It really is. And we're all storytellers. We know that. I mean, every one of us, we're all storytellers. So, you worked with some of the biggest names back then on the biggest shows. I think that there is, you'll get this. I think there's something to be said about being around the superstars and understanding that they're just people. And once you get past that, I think it opens up doors to do anything that you want, because you're not stuck in that mode of gawking or frozen by, they're people, they're good ones, they're bad ones, just like any other profession. How much did that set you up for where you're at now? Because I think when you have the perspective of dealing with any type of person, that you really can do anything.
I totally agree. So I worked at The Tonight Show the summer of Forrest Gump, Mission Impossible, those shows. So I tell the story that, so I was like the green room PA, right? I was like bringing the celebrities in from their cars into the green room, from the green room onto the stage. And I took Rita Wilson to the bathroom, Tom Hanks's wife, who's an amazing singer and actress. And we walked back and she was holding my hand. And I literally couldn't think of anything else than if she washed her hands coming out of the bathroom. Right. So it just it was this very real. And I learned from Jay Leno, who's an amazing individual, that everyone has a story to tell, and everyone is nervous about telling their story.
Yeah.
When I had A++ celebrities coming off and asking me, a 22-year-old nobody, did I do a good job? I was like, if they're thinking that, then why am I scared to do anything? I also grew up in a house full of entrepreneurs. So it was never about like, why me? It was like, why not me? Or you have an idea, why not do that? Then not to say, I'm working on getting to my next level of being on podcast. And when I hit send, sometimes I do hesitate, right? Or I'm working with these high level clients and I'm like, can I, is that really me? That stuff comes up too. I don't want people to be like, well, she doesn't feel like that, because everybody does. But when you just realize that everyone's just trying to get to an endpoint, right? Everyone has a goal of being seen, being heard, and being valued. Then we're all on the same playing field.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I just love that the experience that you had. Okay, fine, you wanted to be an actress, but then we get serious and we say, okay, this is my world. I'm producing. By the way, just for anyone listening that doesn't understand the television world, I will echo what just about any of us that are in front of the camera say, that everything that goes on behind the camera, it sounds like it's just lip service, like trying to make them feel good. Everything that goes on behind the camera that you don't see is significantly more important than any of us in front. It doesn't mean that we don't have talent. Doesn't mean that everybody's doing the work for us. It means none of this work happens without all the people behind the camera. And we so often say in television that if you really want to come and hang out and watch what we do, you can come on my set. I do it all the time for charitable meet and greets on the set, watch the pregame show. But it's an easy thing to do, and people are excited by that, right? They get to sit there and watch a show before they go to the game. But really, the good stuff's what's going on in the truck. That's the interesting stuff. That's the guts behind it all. That's the brains behind it all. So I just wanted to say that because there's a whole nother message there in terms of what goes on behind the scenes in any profession and the important people. But you're teaching people so many important elements to being successful now in their businesses. Let's start with this. Tell me a little bit about F.A.M.E. and what it stands for.
It really came up with this. So I owned a PR firm, and I was working with high-level clients, getting on all the places that everybody listening wants to be on. But they were like, but Beth, nothing's happening. My business isn't moving. I'm getting a little bit of visibility, but nothing's happening. And when I started instituting the F.A.M.E. formula, which honestly is the thing that I had been doing to build my business, that's when the needle moved for them. And F.A.M.E. starts for focus and fearlessness. You have to actually pitch yourself to be out there, right? If you're not on media, you can't use media. The A is for the authority building. How are you actually positioning yourself as an expert? How are you talking about yourself? And how are you looking for the shows for you to be on that can continue to grow your brand? M is for media. How are you understanding how the media works, what the stories you're telling, how you're creating that avenue for yourself? And then E is enhancement. That's actually when you're doing all the promotion strategies, the social media strategies, the email strategies that come along with it, so people can know what you're out there doing. The kiss of death to me, and this is what most people do, I don't know if you've come up against this, is somebody's on the show and they share it once in their story and then it disappears. And you're like, what the F are you doing? That's what I see all the time. You spent the time, I prepped for this interview, you prepped for this interview, right? We have great content that we're going to have when the show's over. Why would you not promote this for the next 3 months? Why would this not be in your email? Why would this not be something that you're talking about live on your video? The mistake that people are making is think that because they're a name or because they have an audience, that just doing something and putting it out there once is going to make a difference, and it doesn't. And that's the biggest lesson I would love people to learn, is you need to have a back end strategy. Because I'll tell you a quick story, Joel. One of my first national TV spots, I was on the Dr. Oz show. I became a Dr. Oz blogger. I had an amazing episode. I was asked to be back for 2 years. But what I realized by being on the show in the beginning was that my business wasn't growing just because I was on the show. My name was on the show. My website was on the show. But when I started instituting a strategy and really talking to the show and sending out emails and lives and being in the promotional piece of the show, that's when my business started to explode. And that's when I really started to grow. The misnomer that I'm going to be on Good Morning America, my whole life's going to change, doesn't actually get you anywhere. It's when you use that credibility to grow the rest of your business. And that's what we do with the F.A.M.E. formula.
And what I love about what you just shared with me, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right here, is that you didn't just pull that story out of nowhere. I don't know that you necessarily came on the podcast and said, I'm sharing that Dr. Oz moment, but my greater point here is that you understood and you have a Rolodex in your head of stories of interesting. And by the way, they don't have to be with famous people, Dr. Oz and all of that. Okay, mine happened to be with a ton of ball players and interesting experiences. A good story is a good story, but you got to use it, and you got to use it effectively. And I'm guessing that you saw a moment right there to take a story, to back up your point, to further solidify it, because we remember stories, right?
Strategy, right? How can I illustrate not using strategy and what wasn't happening? And when I started instituting strategy, what happened? That's the story, right? And I have a story bank. This is what I teach in my programming. I have a story bank of what the story is, what the overall strategy for using the story is, and then how I'm connecting that to my offers without being salesy, right? We've talked about the F.A.M.E formula. Thank you for the prep. You gave me, right, the opportunity to spell it out. So people listening already know what I teach and what I'm about and what my framework looks like. So if people are listening going, oh, I want to leverage my media for more revenue, they already know I'm their person. And now they're listening to see if I resonate as somebody they can spend some time with. Right. And that's what podcasts need to be used for, a business tool. I'm going to go back to that again and again. This is a tool that we use for our business, not just an opportunity to have a conversation with the amazing Joel Goldberg.
Oh, stop it.
Which I love too, but
it's
both pieces.
But that is what, anyway, I could say all kinds of mean things about myself, but I don't know, there's got to be a Jersey something there. So one of the things that you mentioned in one of your videos, by the way, the other thing that I realized, and it goes to what you're saying about, I'm guilty of the one and done sometimes too, the Instagram story, and a little bit of an imposter syndrome of saying, does anybody really care? And I'm not sure that matters. I mean, yes, good content matters, but I noticed that the most important videos that you have, or at least ones that really, really dug into some stuff that are evergreen and that really show who you are, were pinned. I know that's a simple thing, but it got me, as I was looking at it, saying there should be a lot of strategy in the videos that you pin, because this prevents people from having to scrub through all of your stuff. Once they see that, then they might scrub through it. So that was the first thing that popped up. And the second thing that I thought of was that with all of, we become so obsessed with social media, whether it be consuming it or whether it be, when's the right time? What's the right message? What's this? What's that? And you said something on your social media feed that was, I thought, really powerful. You said, the most important thing in your business is not social media. So here you are helping with this and teaching people, yet it might sound counterintuitive. It's not just the social media. Explain that. What's the most important piece?
It's you and your story. That's the most, plenty of people have very successful 7-figure businesses and don't have a large social media platform or footprint. It depends how you want to run your business, but you can have, and thank you so much for the compliments of my social media. Now everyone can go watch all that stuff.
Yes.
But, many people don't do it right. And it's not about posting all the time and having all these likes, right? It's how many people do you need in your business to get to your goals? Mm-hmm. It's not about posting. It's actually about your email list, because if we're going to learn anything from what might happen to TikTok, you can lose it tomorrow.
Yeah.
So that's why I really talk about it's not social media. It's what your story is, how you're communicating it, and how you're allowing yourself to take your idea to whatever level you think you can get to, right? You and I can have an idea and write a blog post or an email, or we can create an offer, or we can create a video, or we can create a whole show around it. How far are you willing to take your idea, and how invested are you in your idea to get to the next level? I think, so I did a cocktail book a couple of years ago. I'm a published author. I'm like, it's right behind me. I'm like, it's over there somewhere. And I had this idea. I was like, people need to drink healthier cocktails. Right. I had met with a friend of mine, my co-writer, and she was like, oh, well, just let's write an ebook and we'll put it out there. I'm like, let's get published. Like, what's that audacious idea that everybody around you is going to tell you not to do, that in your gut that you can accomplish? And that's how I really honestly live my life. Like, how big can I blow this thing up to? And it depends on how big you want to be. Again, being from Jersey and growing up an entrepreneur family, that helps me get there. And I'm not saying it's not easy to get there. And that's how a lot of times I help my clients understand that that's really what this entrepreneurship's about. It's how far you can take yourself and that idea. And we have the imposter syndrome, all that other stuff comes up, but having people to support you to get there and being able to tell the stories around it, I think that's the most fun part about what we do.
And we all get hung up. You talk about this too, and it's another one that resonated with me. We all get hung up on having to make everything just right. I mean, now some more so than others.
Yeah.
But I had a business coach, Mark LeBlanc, who told me, he had the great quote, done is better than perfect.
Oh, yeah.
And the first time I heard that, I'm like, oh my gosh, because I'm so black and white, it's all or none. And I didn't know how to live in that gray area. And I've learned how to live in that gray area. And it's not just in terms of, being productive. It's everything in life, because otherwise we get handcuffed by perfection. I'm not a guy that wants to get on stage and memorize every word. I am not a guy that does a report pacing up and down the sidelines. I might have bullet points. I might not. But most importantly, I want to be me. And I know that's the message that you really believe in. I want you to talk about that more. I think that there's a competitive advantage for all of us that can be authentic and just be ourselves, because so many people forget or are unwilling to do so.
That's why F for me in the FAME formula is fearlessness, is because you have to get past that, right? When I realized that being an entrepreneur is about personal development and testing, that's when everything opened up for me, right? Because if you're doing something and you're going to test it, it can't be perfect. And what I've learned, it's all about creating, testing, tweaking, testing, creating. Like, that's where we keep going with it. So I always say this to my clients: when you're in action, there isn't room for all that noise. When you're doing the stuff, when you have a workflow and when you wake up what you're doing today, I think that's so important, and not a lot of people talk about it. When you know what you're doing, there's not room for the voices. There's not room for that. You can't do this. This isn't for you. The voice says, what do I have to do next? Because I don't know what there is in life that you can make perfect, actually make perfect. Nothing's actually perfect. So why are we trying to be perfect all the time? The messy, right? There's the mess in your message, or show yourself. I wish people could let go of that easier. I don't know what the message is that people have gotten. I work with a lot of amazing women that gotten that message. I need to be perfect. I don't need anyone else. I need to be strong. And they're missing the feeling piece of it. They're missing that authentic connection. And they come to me and they have these huge businesses and they say to me, Beth, I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know what I'm about anymore, because they're really focused on perfecting what they have instead of testing what they have. And when you can just be testing, there's a lot less stress because there's none of that pressure anymore. And I think it's a much easier, I don't know if I've deluded myself, Joel, but that's the space that I live in. It just makes it easier to be me.
But there's a freedom to that we don't give ourselves permission for that, right?
I feel like sometimes what I do in my group programming is I give a lot of permission. People say, Beth, can I do this? Yes. If the question is, can I? The answer is yes. You don't need to ask. Because who's giving you permission? Yourself. There's nobody holding you back. You want to go online and burn your boats and blow up your business? Go ahead. Right? Like, it's you've created it. You can destroy it. You can create it. It's up to you to make that happen. And there's no right way to do it. I do not subscribe to post on this day, post on this. Like, I don't subscribe to that at all. It just doesn't work for me. I have a plan, but I think it's just about being me and just having the idea. Like, my husband showed me a meme this morning. He said something. It was said something like, being a boy, hanging out with girl moms allows me to see how much my kids don't call me, like boys don't call you kind of thing. And I have 2 boys in college. My boys call me every day, right? They connect with me every day because that's my intention for them. I'm not trying to be a perfect mom. I just want to be in their lives every day. So I make that an intentional piece of it. And I get a lot of questions about that too, because I'm surprised my kids have not called me, because they always call when I'm podcast guesting.
We still got 10 minutes left. There's time.
But it's something that I'm seeing in them do, is like, they're just trying to do stuff.
Yeah.
Right. They ask me for permission, but as they gotten older, they stopped doing that. They're just kind of doing stuff. And I want everyone that's listening to, like, let's go back to that kid, that 19, 20, 22-year-old kid that didn't even think about permission. Like, the way I got the job at this Tonight Show is I literally asked Jay Leno at the Comedy Store in LA for a job. Like, who was I? There was no fear. Let's go back to being those kids that had no fear. So we can make this stuff happen, because it's all that noise that keeps us back.
The way us Gen Xers just went out and played until it was dinner time, right? And then went back outside. And so I get back to the freedom of it, right? To not be held to these preconceived rules that we just think have to be done. And it's different for everybody too, right? I mean, some people need more of that structure. For me, if you start telling me I have to do this on this day at this time, blah, 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 I'm going to just not do it. And so it has to be something that I know that I can follow, that enables me to be myself. It's just, it's across the board. I mean, that's a great message. Okay. Before we'll wrap it up with 4 fun questions. Someone like you that has all of your experiences, I could do 100 questions. So I got to figure out where I want to go with that. But let's do the baseball themed questions first. What's the biggest home run that you have hit in your professional career?
The biggest home run that I hit in my professional career was an opportunity for myself to do national TV. That was really my biggest home run. Before I was doing PR, I was a food blogger. And like I said, I got to be on Dr. Oz, but I started thinking about how I could take my idea and make it bigger. And I just started pitching national shows, and I got to be on some New York and LA shows, doing clean cocktails, which are healthier cocktails, yes, with alcohol. But I became like a cocktail influencer. So for me, it's like the home run is, like I did say it before, is taking that idea and seeing how far you can go with it. I'm not in the cocktail space anymore, really. It's not something I talk about, but I have a couple TV spots coming up because it's something that I continue wanting to do for myself and my brand. And for me, that home run is to continue to do that stuff that's outside my revenue spaces and just for me, because I love doing it. And like you, I just love being on TV.
Yes. And I love the idea of some healthy cocktails, because this time of year, especially, when you and I are recording this in December. So maybe people are doing a dry January. I've never done that, but anyway, good stuff in there and fun stuff. That's stuff that people really, really enjoy. And obviously you do too. How about a swing and a miss? And what did you learn from it?
Well, swing and a miss is like a nice failed launch, right? Like doing the conversion event and all the emails and showing up every day, and crickets. That was the biggest swing and a miss. I realized that not everybody wants to be on TV. All my programming, all my messaging were like, get on TV, be on your news, be on those shows. And the resounding response was, too big, Beth. No, I don't want to be on TV. Like, I really started here versus starting at the beginning where my clients and my audience already was. And when I learned and listened to them and changed the focus of what I was doing and changed the focus to what they were already doing, right? I can continue talking about getting on PR and doing all the stuff. But when I listened to my audience, they were like, well, we're doing podcasting. How can you help us with that? That's when everything changed for my business. So instead of listening to them, I was listening to what I wanted to do. And I am not my ideal client. And when I learned that, that's when I understood what they really needed and what they really wanted. And then I could give it to them.
There may be some other Beths out there that are like you, and then, okay, that's easy because here I got, let's do what I'm doing. But for the most part, we're all going to be a little bit different. And so it's a great lesson to learn. By the way, that applies to what any of us are doing. When you could figure out other people's needs, when you could figure out what they need and you make it about them, it goes a long ways. The final one, small ball, the little things that add up to big results. It's the secret sauce. It's what doesn't show up. What's small ball to you?
Small ball to me is micro moments that lead to macro results. Consistency is the small ball. Consistently showing up, consistently being available and present with your audience. To be completely transparent, I had a health issue this summer and I dipped out for about 3 months to take care of myself. You couldn't tell from my social media, my emails, because everything kept going, but I really dipped out. And what I didn't do enough lead generation. So now I'm feeling those effects, but because I've been back in it and back doing what I do for lead generation for the past 3 or 4 months, I'm seeing the influx of larger clientele coming in more regularly. So I've always been consistent, but I didn't realize how I was just like serving my clients and my audience and not doing that piece of it, how much it would actually affect my business. And it's something we talk about, right? What you did 6 months ago is going to affect you today. So it was a big lesson on how I can make sure, hopefully nothing will happen to me again, but how my team can really continue to do those things that only I think I can do by using those macro and those micro moments to move the needle when I'm not available. So I want my business to be able to run without me. I didn't do a good job of it, but now I've learned the lessons and I can go do that for next time. When I want to take a vacation, not a health thing.
Yeah. A vacation, pandemics, whatever, whatever comes your way, keep on rolling. And now sometimes that, maybe that was a swing and a miss too, because you learn, ultimately you figured it out and you had no choice, right? And so sometimes that happens. Okay, 4 final questions as we round the bases. These are fun ones. Ever eaten any bugs before?
Yes, I actually ate bugs on the Drew Barrymore show.
By the way, I mean, well, I don't need to preface this by saying, boy, where did that question come from? Yes, I knew that you. So tell me about eating bugs on the Drew Barrymore show, because that certainly is something that I would think, stop attention.
Yeah, that's actually relationships. I had met a producer when he was working at the Tamron Hall show and had a client on there. And then he went to the Nick Cannon show and I followed him and I would support him if he needed local clients, local guests. They did a lot of like local stuff. And then when he got to the Drew Barrymore show, I was like, I want to be on, I want to be on, I want to be on, communicating that to him in a way. And he eventually called me and said, "Are you a foodie?" And I said, "Of course." I'm not going to say, do you want to come on and eat something with Drew Barrymore? And I was like, yes. And he goes, "Well, we're eating bugs." And I was like, "I don't care." Right. They were like, it tasted like potato chips, but I have the video of her saying, "Up next, special guest, Beth Nydick," and being on that show. And being able to put it on my website and being able to use that credibility, because it doesn't really matter what I was doing on the show. It matters the credibility it gives me, but it personifies the relationships that you need in your business to help you do those bucket list things. Because I would like to make cocktails with Drew Barrymore. You have to be a celebrity to be on her show now. So I'm working on that.
There's always a bigger picture, right?
You never know.
Why
not me?
Why not me? That has served you very well. I think it'll continue to as well. Okay, second question as we round the bases. This is a fun one as well. 2 Guinness World Records in one day. Talk about thinking big, and why not me?
So I was connected with a blogging community, and they were doing an event. They wanted to get the most security guards, like security professionals, on segways for Mall Cop 2. And I was part of their community, so they invited me to go. And in the Guinness book, I'm right in front on the Segway with my security outfit. It was fun. It was one of those things that not only could I share that with my community, like, hey, I'm doing this fun stuff, but I also got to share it with my kids. And we went to Tavern on the Green afterwards, and we got to meet all the stars, and my kids have pictures with the stars. But again, it's relationships that allowed me to be invited to something like that. That was so much fun. I actually have 2 more. I spoke at an event called Podfest, which is the largest conference for podcasters. And because I was speaker, I was a part of those 2 Guinness Book World Records as well.
Pretty cool stuff. You never know when that next record is going to be coming, right? Why not? Okay, I saw we do plenty of research, and this is not a bad one at all. I think it just describes your personality, and it's in my notes, and I thought it would be fun that you've said in multiple interviews that balance is a buzzword that you just don't have. We talk so much about work-life balance and all these things, and I don't know that you're suggesting that people should ignore that too. We all have our whatever our level of balance is, but I'm getting a sense that your either definition of balance or your balance, the Beth Nydick balances, might be different than some other people's.
Yeah, I think it's a construct to make us feel bad about what we're doing. Right? I have times where I'm working 10-hour days and times I'm working 2-hour days. And depending on what my goals are and what I'm trying to do at that point is how I'm working and what I'm doing. But I have boundaries instead of thinking about it balance. I don't work after 6 o'clock. I don't answer phone. I don't work with clients on Fridays. Like I have very strong, and depending on the time of year in the summer, I don't work Mondays and Fridays, depending on what's going on in my business. But instead of thinking about how to balance it, I always like to think about what I'm working on now. Right, everything has a time frame, a launch, a show, everything has a time frame. So if I think about it in that, like, okay, I'm going to be working heavy days for these 3 weeks. And then in my calendar, I'm going to have this time off. I do it that way because being on, like you, on the other side of kids, right? We don't have little kids at home that we have to deal with anymore. There's no opportunity for balance. And I just think it's really thinking about what your goals are right now, what you're paying attention to, rather than putting this pressure on yourself that you need to have balance, because I just don't think it's possible.
No. So it's maybe boundaries over balance. At least one way of thinking about it. And again, it's going to be different for everyone. Okay, the walk-off question, the final. You've said the words "why not me" multiple times.
Yeah.
So what is? I'm not asking for like specific secrets, but maybe it's just something that might feel totally out of reach. Maybe I am looking for specifics, but what? Give me one "why not me" that's in your head right now, because you've clearly demonstrated during this podcast that you are not afraid to think big or think what others might say is unrealistic, and it works out. Not every time, right? But it works out. You can't get there if you don't ask. What's a great "why not me" in your head right now?
I am working on a TV concept that's going to show the world what digital entrepreneurship actually looks like. So I've come up with this concept. I am currently talking to somebody that works at a production company of a household name, and we are pitching. I don't know if she's household yet, but she's getting there for somebody to be in the show. And I feel that 2025 is my year to actually get this show produced or sold. We're going to move the needle on this. I've been working on it for about 2 years. The idea's been percolating for a long time. And it goes back to like, why not me? I have an idea. It's a really good one. And that's what happened with my cocktail book as well. I'm not a big drinker. I actually don't really drink it at all anymore. I drink 0 proof cocktails now, but I know it's a good idea. And when I tell people, and I'll tell you offline if you're interested, when I tell people their idea, they're like, yes, please go do that. So it gives me the support of like, okay, this is an idea. And it's just like I said before, it's just continuing to have the conversation. I got connected with for casting. I got connected with this woman's television agent at CCA. I email her every Tuesday. I got one answer so far. I haven't heard from her in a couple of weeks, but I keep emailing her. And that's when it goes back to those micro moments. I keep moving the needle just a little bit every day, but I want to executive produce this show to show, I would say, all of our moms that what our life is like is not about posting on Instagram. It's about really making an impact in people's lives and showing them what we do and how we do it as a community and as as ourselves, to push ourselves to what we want to be at the next level. Because honestly, I don't want to sit here every day anymore. I want to be back in the studio because that's what I love. Like, think about when you have an idea, and I don't think I did this here, but like when I talk to my friends about the idea, they're like, Beth, you light up when you talk about this idea versus when you talk about other things. And that's why I know that I need to make this happen. I'm not a producer anymore, right? I'm a mom. I'm a little bit on the other side of my career, but I know it's a good idea. So I'm going to continue working until I get it happen. I was going to say until I get no's, but that's not it. I've gotten no's already, but I'm going to just keep working on it until it happens, and we'll see what structure it takes. But I'm not willing to make it a YouTube show, right? That's what people are. I think that's too small. Everyone listening is connected to somebody who's connected to somebody to help their dreams come true. And I mean dreams, like you don't need to have this, like, I'm going to be this idea. Meaning like I have an idea and my dream is to make it happen, and let's see how far I can take it. And that's what I'm doing. So we'll see. So we'll see.
Well, I know that you're not going to quit. That's for sure. And you did, by the way, light up as you were talking about all of that. Okay. So I could hear it in your energy. I could see it in your body language for those that are watching on YouTube. This has been so great. So many important points for people to learn from. You could learn more from Beth at bethnydick.com. Also, check out the book, if you're looking for a clean cocktail, Clean Cocktails, Righteous Recipes for the Modern Mixologist, and so much more. Follow her social media channels. I have a feeling we'll find out what this big idea is at some point when it comes to fruition. Beth, thanks so much for spending time today. Really, really enjoyed this a lot.
Oh, me too. Thanks so much.
It's around the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg.